Hello and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
Myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
It's Sunday the 18th of June 2017 and the weather is fantastic. I cannot complain.
No, it's Father's Day here
it's
in
Father's
Ireland.
Day as well. Happy Father's Day as well for everybody who's a dad. Right, okay, now our guest on the show tonight is a chap called Stephen Manning from Integrity Ireland, and also at the end of the show we have a lady called Antoinette from the Basis Project. She's going to be doing a presentation on the Basis Project in September. So Antoinette's going to come on for about 15 minutes and tell us all about what she does and about her background as well. So yeah, Stephen, as you know, we've mentioned a few times on the show, he was locked away for 2 months illegally and wrongly. But he got out, he was released a bit early, which is great to hear. So we're going to get Stephen's story on exactly what happened and the illegal incarceration of himself. But before we do that, let's find out what the communication channels are.
Okay, communication channels are?
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Yes, the phone number again, 046 927 1212. Is the number to call. If you want to call from outside the Republic of Ireland, it's 00353 469 271212. As we have mentioned and will continue to mention, it is an internet-based phone system, so it can be flaky at times. If you do try and you don't get through, please do try again. If you can't get through to us on the phone line, then we do have the chat rooms as well, oymradio.com. You will see the link there for our own chat room, and we also monitor the chat room on peoplesinternetradio.com as well, so you can post your questions there. We also have the links on the website there to such things as the anti-social media, the Facebook page that is, and also the YouTube and the email. And as we have said from time to time, if you're listening to the show and you haven't contacted us before, why not drop us a little email just to say hi and where you're tuning in from. We love to get those emails. We also have the TuneIn Radio app. That's a link there on the website, a free application for your smartphone or your iPhone. You can stick that on and enjoy us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Alan?
I was just wondering if anybody's out in the back garden having a nice cold beer, tuning into OAM, having a listen, enjoying the weather.
That'd be nice.
We have an OYM. Maybe we should do that. Go outside.
We're broadcasting from the garden, beers in hand.
Well, listen, that might be a bad idea sometime down the line. You never know. Our mobile solution. Run the cable out the window, I think. That's what
the neighbours might get suspicious.
Yeah, exactly. Right, you're kicking us off, Steve.
Yes, I am kicking us off this evening. It is in relation to Grenfell Tower in London. At the time of writing, they said there was in around 70 people dead, but they could only confirm 30. Again, that was at the time of writing. Apparently, the tower was an eyesore, so they used cladding on the side of the building to make it look cosmetically better. Well, it depends on who you talk to. Some people say it was to, make it more economical to run, and but the councils obviously are trying to save some money, so they did. Obviously trying to save money, so they did this contract out to tender. Was there any backhanders to get the contract? ? We don't know. It's funny how they can find the money for military weapons, but not for helping the people. Police investigations taking place at the moment. What they are saying is that a fridge caught fire, but one of the tenants said that there were men working on gas pipes at the time. Now that's quite interesting, but seemingly they put this cladding on, and underneath the cladding was this fiberglass type material, which allegedly was made in Ireland. I don't know if you heard that.
Allegedly, apparently, it's illegal to use in Europe and the UK and Ireland.
Really? Are you sure?
Yeah, and America. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I wasn't aware of that because I know that a lot of homes, even where my father lives, they've actually got this stuff up on the front, and a lot of people in Dublin. They've got this done as well, as opposed to the cavity block insulation. They're actually putting this stuff on the outside.
I'd check it. Chris was saying, my partner was saying that a politician came on, UK politician, and he said that it's actually illegal to use.
Well, that's the big claim there. Unfortunately, for the people who've lost lives and lost family members, there's not much consolation to them.
I know, definitely, yeah. And by the way, the building is still standing up. Didn't collapse.
Yeah, that's a strange one.
That's a strange one.
Well, look, I had this conversation in work during the week. I was going to mention it as part of my week, but I may as well say it now. I mean, yeah, we had this conversation when they were talking in the kitchen in the canteen during the week, and I mentioned, I said, yeah, it was an awful tragedy. I said it really was, and the loss of life is just, it's terrible. But the building still hasn't collapsed, and now I mean, obviously, like it was kind of a little bit tongue in cheek. Because I don't know what temperature the building was burning at, but obviously, aviation fuel allegedly burns at 2,000 degrees. But I'm sure at some point, even that far, in London, I'm sure it probably reached somewhere near there, but it didn't fall.
Didn't fall.
And I don't know.
Yeah,
anyway.
makes you think, doesn't it? Right, okay, the IrishTimes.com, an article that was on the Irish Times saying that Bank of Ireland to have 100 branches cash-free. Here we go guys. This is when they're going to get rid of the actual physical cash and everything will be digital. This is obviously their plan. It's still coming down the line. Customers will have to rely on self-service machines for cash transactions. As many as 100 Bank of Ireland branches will no longer accept cash or coins at the counter from the end of this year as the bank continues to ramp up its digital transformation. Yeah, very convenient, isn't it, for the elites to have just everything digital and no cash.
And what about maybe just a little implant as well? Wouldn't that be just the icing on the cake?
That's being pushed around big time. And it's all got to do with, you should volunteer for this and this makes it easier, da-di-da-di-da. And it'll get to the stage where we think everybody should have it, so we're going to make it mandatory. We're going to have to be careful. That is sneaking in the back door. Be careful. I've seen more reports on that. People doing it.
Sneaking in the back door.
It's sneaking in the back door. Right, over to you, Steve.
Yes, traffic delays on the M50 this week as a man cuts wires of toll bridge tag readers. We have for anyone not in Ireland, we have the M50 and it's this thing that goes across the M50, and once you go underneath it, it scans your registration. And you have, I think it's, 12 hours or 24 hours to pay your toll. If you don't pay your toll, then they send you a letter, and the letter basically says you owe us the €3.10 for the toll, and because we had to send you this letter, you now owe us €6.20. And if you don't pay it, then the next one will be €41, and you'll be going to prison and all this sort of nonsense. We've had personal experience in my household of this, only this week I might add. And yes, my wife, she actually got one of the letters in because she forgot to pay a toll. And she was going to pay the €6, and I said, no, just pay the €3.10 if you want it, because that's all you allegedly owe them. So she paid that, and she hasn't heard that since. I think they got bigger fish to fry anyway. But the overhead cables on the M50 northbound toll bridge were cut, forcing the motorway to be shut down for a time and reportedly causing over €100,000 worth of damage. Now, I think I heard that it was €100,000 loss per day. That's what I heard now. I mean, we don't know. But the man said, well, some people actually thought he was going to jump, that he was on the bridge, and they thought he was actually going to jump. So everything kind of came to a standstill. It was around 9:30 at night. But once he got up and he cut the wires, he took some photographs of himself in situ, allowed all the motorists to pass through free once they reopened. Don't know how long it's going to take them to get it back up and running, but I did stick a link in the chat room there as well. Seemingly, it was Mr. Tony Rochford. Of course, we can either say that, that's 100% true, I don't know, but there is a nice picture of Tony there on the M50 looking down at the road. So, yeah, well, if anyone has any journeys to make, if you need to get there quicker, you can take the M50 because I believe it's free at the moment.
Excellent. So it took a selfie on top of the bridge.
Yeah.
Very good.
Why wouldn't you?
Very good. Okay, now we got an email in during the week from a listener asking about when will David Icke be on the show. Now, funny enough, if you remember, we did have emailed Jamie, who's David's son, and Jamie said to email him near the summer, and then we'll sort something out. Now, I have emailed Jamie, and I have emailed Gareth, and I have not got any emails back from them. So I don't really know what's going on there. So I'll just keep you posted. If anything comes in, I'll let you know. But at this moment in time, I don't know what the story is regarding David. As I say, I have emailed both of them. So we'll just have to kind of watch this space. Steve, how's your week? Yeah,
well, one of the things on my week, as I mentioned, was that the Grenfell Tower in London. So I think we've covered that. what's the next thing? Aspirin. Anyone who was watching the TV during the week, they would have seen, you know, where they're doing all this, they have their ticker tape, I think it's what it's called, going along the bottom. Well, on one of the news channels, it was an article saying that prescribed aspirin causes nearly 3,000 deaths per year. A lot of people who would have had, you know, maybe little pains in the chest and went to the doctor and went for an ECG, may have been put on aspirin to kind of thin the blood and prevent strokes and heart attacks and what have you. But now they're saying, they were saying it's perfectly safe. It's 75 milligrams per day. It's all good. And that was a couple of years ago. And now they're saying that it may kill you. Well, one of the guests we had on a couple of years ago, Gordon James Gananotto, he was actually on aspirin for a period of time, and he said it affected his eyes. It degenerated his eyes, and you know he finds it very difficult to read now at the moment. But yeah, it's just amazing. Like, what's safe today will not be safe tomorrow, and you know we can all kind of testify to that. You know, you go back years ago, smoking was considered safe, and doctors smoked, and then all of a sudden, no, it wasn't safe. Asbestos was safe; it was fantastic, and now asbestos is not safe. So you know, you just take everything with a pinch of salt. Do your own research, as we've said many times before. Just
on that, just remember that all the drugs that the FDA approved, or I should say, all the drugs that the FDA has banned had been approved at one time.
Oh, that's right. I mean, it's not just by the FDA; it's the same in every other country too. Yeah. Excuse me. And the final thing that I just wanted to mention, and I did put a link up there in the chat room. I will post it again for anyone who didn't get it. It's researchers find that frequently eating French fries doubles the risk of death. Yes, your French fries, or your chips as we call them here in Ireland, can kill you. On the same week as you know, the village where I live, we actually get a chipper, and the chips are quite nice, I would say, actually. I'm not promoting it or not, I'm just saying. But yeah, assumably, if you're going to be going, and we've heard this one before as well, if you are going to be eating your French fries or your chips, cook them yourself in, where is it here? It says use avocado oil or coconut oil for frying, because these oils have no hydrogenated fats or trans fats, and they remain stable at high temperatures. Also, it says if you're going to use salt, use the healthier varieties like Himalayan crystal salt. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, unfortunately, those of us who like the old chips will have to think twice now and just do them at home. Anyway, bad news for me.
Every now and again, it's okay. A little bit of what else, yeah, as you say.
Yeah, okay, right. I'll stick the link anyway up in the chat room if anyone else wants to get depressed over their lovely weekly dose of chips. Anyway, there we go. Done and dusted. How's your week?
Right, my week. Right, before we bring Stephen in, just a couple of things. Now, remember, we were always trying to find a solution as to what way we can get away from the banks. And basically...
With a balaclava and a very fast car.
Well, yeah, preferably if you don't rob it, because you might be in trouble if you do that. But if you want to kind of try and get away from the banks and not use a bank account, then the solution which I think would work, and we've talked about it before, two different things, but combined to do them. One is to have a credit union account, something that I've jumped in with both hands. And I have to say, things are a lot better dealing with the credit union than dealing with the banks, and percentage rates are a lot less. 7% is better than 24%. So that's all sorted. But the credit union, because with the credit union, you can have your salary paid into that as well, and you can go and take money out when you need, and you can get an actual bank link card as well off the credit union. Now, you might say, great, that's the credit union and you have your money in there, but what about the things that you have to pay direct debit, standing orders, or you have to order, say you want to order tickets online? Well, that's where the Swirl card comes in, SWIRLCARD, the Swirl card. Now, the Swirl card acts like a debit card, and what you do is you top it up. So if you have 100 or 200 euros, and basically, you okay?
I'm just wondering, is it a Swirl card or a Swift card?
It's a Swirl card,
It's a Swirl card, okay.
Yeah, that's a typo. Yeah.
We'll edit that out of the live show, I suppose.
Yeah. But it's a Swirl card. So basically what you do is you go into the newsagent, you buy the card, and you top it up, and they have a little charge for you, whatever money you put on it. But you can use that like a debit card. And you can, you buy tickets, and you can go to online stores, and you can buy it using online stores. So basically, if you combine the credit union and your Swirl card, why do you need a bank account? There you go. There's no other reason I can think of why you need a bank account, because the credit union and the Swirl card does everything. And if you want to set up a direct debit or standing order, you can do that in the credit union as well. So maybe we should start thinking about that. Hit the banks where they hurt, and say, right, we're not going to use you anymore. We're going to be using the credit union, going to be using Swirl card, and just get away from the banks. So that's just a consideration for people. Have a think about that. The other thing is that I was doing some research on Raymond Rife during the week, because I'm going to be doing another video tutorial demo got to do with the Spooky too. And I came across that the Cancer Research UK website said their slogan is, let's beat cancer sooner. They were having a pop at Raymond Rife and his claims with no apparent evidence, apparently. They obviously didn't look hard enough. They want to keep looking and not find a cure, so the money keeps rolling in. Maybe their slogan should be, let's keep screwing the public with this lie. That's really what their slogan is. Cancer is a massive industry. It's a way of making money. And as long as they don't find a cure, the money keeps coming in. So why would you want to find a cure and lose all that money coming in, all donations and funding and everything else? Serious folks, we have to get away from this, the whole idea of these cancer charities. Cancer is curable, it has been for a long time. They just don't want to admit it because they're making loads of money out of it. And we need to wake up to that. Right, okay, let's get our guest on. Now, Stephen Manning is involved with the Integrity Ireland group, a group that's at the cutting edge of challenging the legal system. Unfortunately, in one of these instances where Stephen was challenging the legal system, the judge, I'll let Stephen tell you his story, but basically he got incarcerated and put away for 2 months, not for being troublesome, but just asking questions. Obviously, the judge didn't like it, but we'll get the actual details off Stephen. Good evening, Stephen. How are you doing?
Good evening, Alan. Nice to hear from you.
Great stuff. Thanks a lot for coming on, Stephen. Now, do you want to give us a quick bio for people who don't know you? Do you want to give us a quick bio on Integrity Ireland, and then we'll get stuck into why you are locked up and what happened in the courtroom?
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Right, okay, we're back. Now, we had to get Stephen on the phone line there because the line quality on the internet was terrible. He was breaking up there, and obviously we want to make sure that we can hear Stephen. Stephen, are you there?
Yes, I am now again, Alan. Yeah.
Great stuff. Okay, Stephen, let's take it from the top there because you were breaking up and we missed some of the information. You did go through Integrity Ireland and the group and what you do. That's great. If you just want to finish off that part, and then we'll crack on.
Yes, it's an organisation set up to challenge corruption, cronyism, and criminal cover-ups, and on the positive side, to encourage openness, transparency, and justice in Irish institutions, in the face of what we see as the abject failure of the statutory oversight bodies to, properly do their jobs, basically. My own role, basically, I was a publisher prior to getting directly involved in Integrity Ireland. It's taken up a great deal of my time over the last few years. I don't know if you caught the part, but I was boasting a little bit that we'd gone from having 2 hits the first month that we put the website online in 2012 to just crossing the 10 million mark this month. And there was a bit of a surge of interest, of course, because of my imprisonment.
Definitely. Well, I did say on the show that you did take one for the team because actually being imprisoned and what happened. So tell us in detail what happened, Stephen, because people obviously want to know, because you're the last person I'd expect to be locked up. You're not the type of person I would say that you'd be a troublemaker in court. You'd be the type of person to ask questions, and it sounds to me like you frustrated the judge and he was just throwing his toys out of the pram.
Well, you've come up. That's quite a good summary overall, Alan. But I always try to maintain a sort of an air of dignity and all that in the court, because much as internally I can feel very frustrated, especially when I can see that people who are being paid by the taxpayer to uphold the law and to protect the interests of the citizen, when I see that they're doing exactly the opposite in some cases, it's immensely frustrating. But this particular case, we need to let people know that it began with myself and a colleague, Colm Granahan, another member of Integrity Ireland. Now, what had been happening, if you recall, back in 2014 and 15, when so many people started losing their homes and the banks started coming in, the cutthroat activities to repossess mortgages in distress and all that. We turned up at a hearing one day just to show moral support. We decided to turn up. There was a group of us, maybe about 20 of us or so, and we turned up to show moral support for these homeowners who, like many of us, they were going into the courts somewhat like lambs to the slaughter, and we just wanted to let them know that they could join our group and at least discuss their problems with like-minded others who might be able to help them. We weren't claiming any particular expertise or anything, but we had come to realize one particular anomaly, a really serious anomaly that still sticks out now as being a ridiculous conflict of interest, and that is the county registrars in Ireland. Now, I think there are 32 county registrars in Ireland. Now, apart from in the cities of Cork and Dublin, the county registrars around the rest of Ireland, they deal with circuit court issues, like a quasi-judge. And they're also usually the election agents as well. They get paid extra during election time and that sort of stuff. But these county registrars are often the people who drop the gavel and say that house is being repossessed. And they then hand the case over to the local sheriff, who gets a poundage from the banks, a percentage on every house that he repossesses. Now, what nobody was telling anyone was the fact that the county registrar is the sheriff. Now, this was one of the issues that we wanted to bring in and just at least raise it, and at the very least make them feel a bit awkward and uncomfortable about the fact that they were, making people homeless and then profiting from it.
So let's just clarify that for people, just so because some people don't understand, they've never been in court. When you go into court regarding a repossession, you don't go up into a court and see a judge, you see a local county registrar. Now, the registrar, it's in their interest to make sure that they try and get a repossession, because what they do is they take one hat off being the registrar and they put the hat on being the sheriff, and they get a percentage of whatever the sale is of the property. So there's a conflict of interest there, because there's an incentive for the registrar to get a repossession and not try and sort the case out.
Yes, and it's so obvious that, when you tell this to my friends in the UK and everything, they say, no, go out of it, that couldn't be going on. But it is, and it's only typical now we're beginning to realise of the strokes that are being pulled all across the board in state boards and state institutions, and it's all being paid for at the expense of ordinary people or the taxpayers in general, But anyway, this was one of the issues, and the other issue, of course, was that technically we own the banks. And what we'd done, we created a few posters saying, we do not agree to this. We owe the banks. We are the shareholders. We do not agree to what's going on. So we just wanted to try and raise some awareness. Now, the response by the authorities and by one particular county registrar, a man called Fintan Murphy, was typical. He called in the riot squad, and the Gardaí got very heavy-handed with members of the public and caused injuries to some and so on and so forth. Now, this happened a number of times, and eventually we decided, in the members of Integrity Ireland, we sat back and we said, look, what can we do about this? I mean, clearly we're being assaulted. This is against the law. None of us are getting arrested or charged with anything, but we're all getting manhandled and being thrown out of the courts, and in some cases people are being violently assaulted, being kicked and bruised and bloody and so on and so forth. So we decided on one particular occasion, which we managed to get up on Facebook, we decided, okay, we're now going to take out a private criminal prosecution against the county registrar and against the lead sergeant in one of these fracases. So now this is really, really important, Alan. If there was only one thing that I wanted to convey to people that would be listening tonight, would be the fact that you and me and every single person out there that is resident in the state, you don't even have to be a citizen, if you reside in this state, you can be a prosecutor in your own right. In other words, if you know a crime is being committed against you, or even indeed against the general public, let's say by a minister of state who's involved in known corruption or, brown envelopes, whatever it might be, you can take the initiative without going to the guards, without going to the DPP's office, without having anything to do with anyone else. You can walk straight into a district court and you present one sheet of paper to the judge. It has to be a district court judge. You give him a sheet of paper, you allege that this crime is committed, and provided you can establish a crime has been committed, the judge has to, and I say has to by law, issue a summons for the individual that you've accused to come into court. Now, when I say that he has to do it, this is where it gets a bit humorous and a bit funny. He has to do it by virtue of the legislation, which is known as the Petty Sessions Ireland Act 1851. He also has to do it by virtue of the fact that in the last 4 years, the High Court, the Supreme Court, and even the new Court of Appeal have all endorsed this process as being absolutely legitimate, and this was in the face of bankers trying to get the legislation thrown out because somebody used it against some bankers. And they've absolutely endorsed it, and the rule has come down from above. If you walk into a district court and you can establish a crime has been committed, you don't have to tell the guards, you don't have to even notify the court service. You walk straight in with your information form, a one-page form, you give it to the judge, he has to issue a summons. But this is where my particular story sort of begins and ends and becomes sort of interesting, because that's what my friend Colm and I were doing in September 2015. We had already been in to a district court judge. I'd been to a judge, Kevin Kilrain, and I'd got summonses issued for the sergeant to turn up in court to answer charges of assault. Colm had also had summonses issued for the county registrar to come into the court for ordering the assaults on members of the public. But the short version of the story, because I could go off in a tangent here and get into too much detail, the short version of the story is that they didn't turn up in court. And all sorts of trickery and subterfuge was going on behind the scenes, with a High Court judge coming in off holiday and papers being delivered to Colm at 9:30 the night before. Interestingly, all of our phones, there was 5 of us who were trying to reach each other that night. We couldn't get through to each other from about 9 o'clock in the evening all the way through until early the next morning. Very strange goings on. But we had a substantial group of people in the court who were eager to see this private prosecution process in action, because it doesn't cost anything either, Alan. You know, this is a completely free process. It's completely uncomplicated, and I'll just give a little plug to the book that we produced about 6 months ago. It's called DIY, Do It Yourself, DIY Justice in Ireland, Prosecuting by Common Informer. It's easily found. It's only a tenner. You can get it on off the internet in any bookstore, you know, online. And this explains the process, and the reason we produced the book was because we found, you know, we're up against certain people in the pay of the state who appear to be absolutely without morals or conscience. And when this happens at the top end of the scale, you know, when we get, you know, senior civil servants or ministers of justice or you know, Garda commissioners, for example, and then across as well into, you know, lawyers and barristers that work for the state, and of course judges, when we find that these people don't think twice about taking someone's home, throwing them into jail, and often on spurious grounds, you know, when you realize that's what you're up against, and if you want to stay within the law, you know, you have to try and find some way to sort of punch back. And so this was the one simple, easy way that we could do it. So we were in the court. It was September the 2nd, 2015. The two of them didn't turn up, and it was Judge Kevin Kilrain, the same judge who'd signed my summons, and he tried to fog over the issues. And Colm and I had taken our places as prosecutors. We were standing up on the front benches, which are usually reserved for the barristers and the gowned elite, you know, and the guards. And it basically became a standoff. It went on for about 40 minutes. And with each fumbled attempt by the judge to try and, you know, overlook the issues and say, no, we're not dealing with this today, move it on, I'll talk to you later, and everything. Myself and Colm, we just kept insisting, Judge, you have to issue bench warrants. These people aren't here. You know the law. You're breaking the law now. And eventually, Colm then turned around and said to him, all right, I've had enough. Judge Kevin Kilrain, I'm placing you under citizen's arrest for, you know, perverting the course of justice.
Yeah.
And you can imagine now, it wasn't planned, and I say this, you know, hand on heart. Yeah. Actually, one of the charges against me was that I went into the court with the intention of causing a disturbance, and that I engaged in threatening and abusive behaviour and all this, you know, and we'll come to that in a second. But there was no plan. Our plan that day was to move ahead with our prosecutions. We fully expected the Garda Sergeant and the County Registrar to turn up in court, just like any other person on this planet would have had to have done if they got a summons. But instead, the system circled the wagons to protect them while they ran around in a blind panic. And I say they're in a blind panic because I've already got this matter actually pending at the Supreme Court. And I'm saying to the Supreme Court in so many words, look, you're the ones who said that this is a legitimate process. And it's sitting there in the legislation since 1851. Now, if it's legitimate, you go and tell the district court judges that it's legitimate. But we already know that the district court judges have been told this because I was informed by a judge that a memo had gone around in 2015 telling them about this common informer process. Now, this was after we had 5 or 6 judges, literally, and I mean, I'm not exaggerating here when I say literally, just stand up with either a dumb or a confused or a terrified look on their face and just do a left turn and walk out while we were talking.
That's just incredible. That's just, I mean, if you did that in court, they'd arrest you. They'd say, where are you going? Where the hell are you going?
We even had in this sequence of attempts to prosecute various agents of the state, and I'll say, as well as that particular incident, which eventually landed me in jail, I'll come back to that in a second, we have made the original applications. In other words, we've gone into a district court, we've got the forms filled out, we've handed them across the counter to the registrar, the judge. So that's our bit complete. We've made the application. The next sequence, the next step in the sequence is for the judge to say, take the witness stand or show me your full complaint in writing. And at that point he goes, yes, a prima facie case has been established. So it's not a very high standard of proof. You've just got to say, oh, your man stole my bicycle, or your man punched me in the nose, and here's a photograph of it, and here's my witness. That's enough. Okay, the person you've accused is summoned then to turn up in the court, and you are the prosecutor.
Yeah.
You're the person who then questions them on the stand about the crime. Now, again, I don't want to make this more complicated than it needs to be, but to put it very generally, if it's a very serious crime, the DPP has the authority to come in and take over. But if it's a lesser crime, known as a summary offence, then you maintain the control of the prosecution right through to the point where the judge says yes, guilty or not guilty, and if the person's guilty, he can put them in jail, or he can fine them, or all the other usual criminal penalties. But anyway, just to explain again, Alan, just briefly, we had, at the beginning, we were trying to also prosecute, as well as this Garda Sergeant, I also tried to prosecute 4 guards in Dublin because they had assaulted me in a courtroom. And that, again, another ridiculous, bizarre scenario where it ended up with 7 different traffic charges against me. They were all ridiculous. They were all silly. There was no evidence to back it up. I had all the paperwork I needed, but every time I would go up to Dublin to turn up in court, the judge would adjourn it. This was regardless of whether the prosecuting guard turned up, regardless of whether I was saying, my judge, this summons is 3 months out of time, blah, blah. It was all clearly designed to vex me and frustrate me and interfere with my work with Integrity Ireland. And it was around that same time, actually, Alan, although it's not a topic we need to discuss tonight, but you'll probably recall I made a run at the general election specifically for the purposes of putting a spotlight on Integrity Ireland.
Yep.
So that rattled the establishment a little bit as well, because it was here in Enda Kenny's own constituency, and I was getting on the radio and had a few minutes on TV, and I was naming and shaming some of the big names around here.
Yep.
So there would have been a vested interest on the part of some authorities to silence me, frustrate me, and stop the work of the Integrity Ireland project, particularly with this common informer process that we were advertising to all and sundry, and putting videos up about it. We even had the Irish Times cover a full-page story, I think about 6 months ago. Nice big spread in the Irish Times about it, and with a cover of the book and everything. But we've had judges, literally just, we handed the paperwork. I had one judge down in Dublin, Judge Miriam Malone. She said, I'll go and look at this over lunch. Now, I knew the paperwork was spotless, so she went over lunch, she came back, and she looked at the paperwork, she looked up at me, she looked back down again, she looked up, and then she said, I'm not dealing with this, you take it to another court. And she handed it to the registrar and stood up and walked out. Now, the only way that I can compare this, and that woman was previously a president of the district courts in Ireland, you know. Another one, Miriam Walsh, she, on the first occasion that we were in there, and I had 5 or 6 people with me, we handed in the paperwork, she looked at it, she got up and she walked out, and I said, Judge, where are you going? And as I said that, the registrar said to the clerk, you know, said, the court has risen, as you do. And I said, well, we can see that, but why? Why hasn't she dealt with this? Well, you don't get to ask those questions. Guards remove them, you know, that sort of stuff. So we went back a week later or 2 weeks later with the same applications. I didn't realize it would be the same judge in this, you know, and we were moving from court to court trying to find different judges. But anyway, it's the same judge. This time she takes the paperwork off me, goes away over lunch to waste our time, comes back 3 o'clock in the afternoon or something, and then says, I didn't like your attitude last week, therefore I'm not dealing with this. And when I said, what do you mean my attitude? It was the fact that we said, where are you going, Judge? You know? But you see, they're blatantly breaking their own rules, and they're acting in direct violation of Superior Court, High Court, and Supreme Court rulings.
Yeah, again, it goes back to, you know, the chess masters. I mean, they just come across pompous, arrogant people. You know, they just think that the buck stops with them, and this is why the judicial system doesn't work, because...
But the book does stop with them, that's the thing.
I know,
it's only when people like Stephen start to learn the law and learn the rules of the chess game and then start playing the game with the rules.
I mean, let me just clarify that. The system works if they played by the rules, but they don't, and that's the problem.
Right, I'll tell you what, Alan, actually, the chess game analogy is not bad, actually, but I would put it this way. Yes, it's like sitting across from, you're saying, a master chess player, right? But they expect us all to be poor players. And because of that, unbeknownst to us, they've been pulling strokes on us for a long time and we weren't aware of it. Now, let's say I got my hands on a very rare old chess-playing book, and it showed me a new move. I remember myself now playing chess, people who know the move, you know, castling, where you can change the king and the castle over.
That's right, yeah.
I played chess for years, not seriously, like, you know, but, you know, just casually, before I realized that somebody did that to me one day. I said, what the hell are you doing? He says, oh, that's a proper... No, it's not. Don't be ridiculous. You can't swap you can't leap them over each other like that. But in fact, it is a proper move, and if you know it, it comes in handy if you're in difficulty.
Oh, I do know the game, so yeah, you're right. It is legit. It's a legit move.
But it's an unusual move. Certainly a beginner wouldn't be aware of it, you know. So this common informer thing, it's a bit like us walking in and springing on them this surprise move, and their response is to throw the table over.
Yeah.
Or to get up and walk away from the table and scatter the pieces. Now, obviously, that's not allowed, and that's not in the rules. But what do you do when it's judges that are breaking the rules?
Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, the simple answer is, and it's something that I'm going to be doing very shortly, and I'll be doing it in a full public blaze, because secrecy is one of their weapons as well. Secrecy, separation, keeping people isolated, you know, dealing with them in isolation with all the powers of the state behind them, you know. And the amazing fade factor, of course. Anything that's embarrassing or anything, just shut up and keep quiet and hopefully it'll go away. Yeah. Not with us. We counteract that by exposing. And so I will be going after at least 2 judges that were involved in this case with me. One of them is Judge Aenus McCarthy out of Limerick, who, believe it or not, has just retired. And when I say he has just retired, I don't believe that it is a coincidence that he has suddenly retired literally the day before I was due to be released from prison.
Yeah.
There's certain things I couldn't do while I was under the jurisdiction of the prison. That jurisdiction ended yesterday. Aenus McCarthy retired the day before.
Yeah.
Now, I'll say now, whether or not this is coincidence, usually, you know, coincidence, I mean, the man is in his later years. I wouldn't like to guess his age. Maybe he is due for retirement. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if somebody whispered in his ear, if you're going, go now, before Manning gets out of jail, because you can be sure he's coming after you. And he knows that I intend, when I say coming after him, this is not a threat, I want to make that clear. I intend to come after him lawfully and legally. I've already written to him and made it clear in no uncertain terms that I believe that he had engaged in a series of criminal acts during the course of the district court trial, as such as it was called, and that I would be pursuing him using this private prosecution system. I've already lodged formal criminal complaints within Garda Síochána for all that's worth, but at least I've done so, and it's on the record. And I've made formal complaints to just about everybody and their uncle, so to speak, in the echelons of power.
Okay.
That would have any understanding of what's going on, including the Chief Justice, Susan Denham, and all her cohort, all the top judges in the land. I've told them what's going on.
Okay. So, can I tell you what? Just from watching the time as well, do you want to tell us what happened in the court? Well, we know what happened in the court, but after the judge turned around and said to you, right, this man is going to be locked up, tell us the process, what happened.
All right, Alan. Actually, okay, and I'll cut to the quick here, because I can channel. I've got to be told I'm a bit of a chatterbox at times, so I'll try and restrain myself here. Okay, as I said, on September the 2nd, 2015, these people didn't turn up, the county register and the sergeant. The judge he abandoned his court in shame and disgrace, and it was mainly because the people in the body of the court, some of whom would have been, supporters, and they were there to see what would happen, started calling out, get off the bench, you're a disgrace. And so the short version of it, there was an incident in the court that day, all right? That's what the listeners need to know. There was an incident. There was a disruption in the court. But my whole argument is that my position and Colm's position was absolutely legitimate. For us to ask the judge to surrender himself into our custody, to be handed over to the guards, because he was deliberately attempting to pervert the course of justice. Now, and I still maintain that that's the case.
Okay.
9 months later, we were alerted that a summons had been issued. Now, the summons had to have been issued within 6 months. Again, by another amazing coincidence, it states on the summons was applied for, when? Exactly 6 months to the day from the offence. So that put it technically legal. I told you there were about 25 members of the public present on the day. The prosecution was going to be led by the Mayo State Prosecutor, acting directly under Claire Loftus. Now, we know this is a fact. These are not assumptions. He said this in court. He went out to take a phone call. Who are you talking to on the phone? He said, Claire Loftus, the DPP. So she's instructing the Mayo State Solicitor to come after myself and Colm on this Section 6 public order charge. The allegations were backed up by 18 written statements. Every person who submitted a written statement either worked for the state or was employed part-time by the state occasionally. That's solicitors, guards, prison officers, and court service staff. The preliminary hearings began in June 2016. The first one I was at was chaired by Judge Mary Devons. I asked Judge Mary Devons before I would do anything else. I said, Judge, before we go any further, can you confirm that I am safe from physical assault while I'm in your courtroom, as long as I'm not doing anything wrong? She wouldn't answer the question. To my astonishment, she would not answer the question. I mean, for God's sake, why couldn't she just simply say, of course, Mr. Manning, of course. As long as you're not doing anything wrong, you're not going to come to any harm here. But I was literally carrying injuries which I've had to have operated on from the assaults that I'd received in the Dublin courtroom that I told you about earlier. So I thought I'd just make a point of this. Let's make a point of this.
Yeah.
And she refused, and we've got a video of this. Somebody filmed this in the court, and eventually she got up and she walked out. She walked out of her court. Now, I'm there as a defendant with Colm. Colm had already spoken. I didn't enter a plea. I was going to ask for legal aid. I didn't get the opportunity to do that. And then a crowd of guards surrounded me and told me I had to get out. So I'm now escorted out of the courtroom. Again, no charges against me or anything, right? As a courtesy, I came back to the court 2 weeks later. Now we have a Judge John Lindsay. Now, Judge John Lindsay, Judge Mary Devons is Fianna Fáil. She's married to a Fianna Fáil councillor. Judge John Lindsay is Fine Gael. Daddy was a minister, right? Now, Judge Lindsay began, I asked him, was I safe in his courtroom? And he began by telling me, do you want 7 days in jail? And I said, well, of course not, Judge, but can you just please guarantee my safety? And he says, do you want to go to jail? And he started shouting and screaming and bawling at me, So, with that, again, a crowd of guards came around me, and he said, you have to leave. So I was escorted out again. Now, I put in a couple of common informer applications that day as well. Those were handed out the back door and brought back to me by the county clerk. They weren't acted on either. So now I've had 2 hearings. He refused also to guarantee my safety in the court. So at that point I thought, right, I'll take a stand on this. So I then wrote to all of the authorities, all of the statutory authorities, the court service, everyone, the CEO of the court service, you name it, everyone, the Garda Commissioner, all of them. And I said, look, Castlebar Courthouse has now become a crime scene. On occasions, we're blocked from entering. On other occasions, I'm being forced to leave where I've got a right to be there to speak. On other occasions, judges are walking out, and nobody will guarantee that I'm safe. So with one of you, any one of you, and this included, I wrote to President Higgins even on this as well, and the Taoiseach, Enda Kenny. I said, I just want a guarantee from any one of you that I won't be assaulted while I'm as long as I'm behaving myself, and acting lawfully in the court. And you know what? I did not get it. Actually, I got one reply from the Attorney General, Mary Whelan, who's in the news at the moment.
Okay.
Unfortunately, her reply was, I'm replying to tell you that I can't communicate with you on legal matters because I only advise the government. I wrote back to her and I said, didn't you realise, Marie, you actually, the government works for us. No response.
Okay, so let's. I'm sorry to speed things up because I know we can go down rabbit holes in different sections. But if you get to the stage where they
jailed me, yeah. Okay. Well, this is actually quite interesting because Enos McCarthy, as I said, was sent up from Limerick and he started the trial on September the 6th, 2016. He started making the declaration because I was saying I wasn't going to go. He said that doesn't matter. We'll carry on without him. Now, and unfortunately, this particular charge, this Section 6 public order charge, is one of those charges that you can be charged with in absentia, in your absence, and you can be sent to jail on it. So I had no choice but to turn up and try to defend myself. He awarded me legal aid as soon as I got there, and he gave me an hour to get it. And when I didn't get it in an hour, he said, the trial continues. Now, all of this is unlawful, as anybody who knows even a smattering of legality. They know, look, if you're entitled to legal aid, they've got to provide it. If they don't, the trial just can't start. Yeah. But he said, no, and 4 days of trial went ahead. Now, there is issues involved in this that people can check out for themselves. We discovered that the recordings of September 2015, the recordings that had been ordered released to us through the court service had been interfered with. They had deleted files off them, and they just sped others up so that the judge had to throw it out of evidence. Now, this is criminal damage, Alan. If you or I did it, it's up to 10 years in jail. Yeah. Right? I reported all this to all across the board again, and as I said, even took it up to the High Court on judicial review, and everything's being ignored, swept under the carpet, try not to talk about it, turn a blind eye. It's outrageous. Anyway, I'm now in the process. We've had 4 days of trial in September. I've now spent weeks coming up and down to the High Court, telling them what's going on in Castlebar, saying I haven't got any legal representation, the trial's going ahead, they're all telling lies, we can prove this, blah, 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 the file's going missing. So outrageous behaviour and conduct by the judge, and so on and so forth. And the trial continues nonetheless. November, they finished the prosecution case, and I think it's fair to say that between us, between Colm and myself, we made most of the prosecution witnesses to either look like fools or liars. And, it was clearly a setup. No members of the public had even been interviewed, this supposed investigation that the guards had done about the alleged incident. So, at the end of November, Judge Enos McCarthy finishes the prosecution case, refuses to throw the case out again, and then says to us, come back here on January the 26th. Now, this is really important, Alan, and you'll understand why. Come back on January the 26th, which was a Thursday. And he said, if this changes, Vincent Dean, the Mayo State prosecutor, will alert you. So anyway, Colm and I hear nothing. On the 23rd of January, which was a Monday, I was up in the Supreme Court desperately trying to get the Supreme Court to order the court service, believe it or not, to cooperate with me and give me the documents out of the High Court that I needed to make an application to the Supreme Court. I'm being stonewalled and blocked all the way. So I'm sitting up there in the Supreme Court in front of Judges Denning and McKechnie and others, and the phone rings. And it's Castlebar Gardaí at 11 o'clock in the morning. Where are you, Stephen? I said, well, I'm up in the Supreme Court. Why? You're supposed to be here. I said, no, that's not till Thursday. No, he says, you're supposed to be here. Judge McCarthy is here. I said, no, that's ridiculous. He told us 26th. I've got it written down. It's in our papers, the High Court papers. It's up on social media, everywhere. The so-and-sos had gone ahead. The DPP removed Vincent Dean from the case and put in their Deputy Director of Superior Court Operations, a fellow called Raymond Briscoe, a right aggressive, very ambitious sort of lawyer type, He replaced Vincent Dean. They put in another new barrister, and then they moved the case forwards from the 26th of January to the 23rd, and because I wasn't there, I was declared guilty in my absence and sentenced to 2 months in jail. Now, bear in mind, Alan, I didn't even enter my defence. We hadn't heard a defence witness or anything, right? Yeah. I was lifted off the train on January the 23rd. and arrested by the guards in Ballyhornis train station and taken into the police station overnight. In the morning, I was brought in front of Enos McCarthy, who was seething. You could see it in him. But he was seething because he knew I'd made complaints. I'd written to him and told him that the criminal complaints had gone in about him into the Gardaí corner. He'd had 2 or 3 judicial reviews where I was up in the High Court telling High Court judges what a pig's ear he was making of the trial and everything, right? And he was going, right, that's it. He said, you're going to jail for 2 months. And I said, this is ridiculous. And the guards said to me, well, we've got to take you to jail, Stephen, unless what? 2 papers were produced. You have to sign these and appeal to the circuit court. Now, by signing the appeal to the circuit court, I prevented myself being able to go directly to the High Court on what they call a judicial review. And I did it because, obviously, the idea of going into jail for 2 months was just so astounding and shocking. And So I signed the appeal. They raced it forwards. It now means that you get a new trial in front of a circuit court judge. I went in again looking for legal aid. Judge Raymond Gork, who's the president of the circuit court, I walked into him, I gave him a written application, and I stood up and he said, no, he said, you've made complaints about me in the past. Yeah, I'm not dealing with you. I said, it's only an administrative task, Judge, and, it has to be done. No, and he got up smirking, like a child, smirking, and walked out. I made another written application over the counter to Peter Mooney, the Castlebar Court Service Manager, who is one of the people who is directly involved in erasing the files off the CD. And I say this without any fear of being contradicted, because we have all the proofs. He took the document off me, he looked at it, he said, I'm not accepting this. I said, you have to accept it, Peter. It's the 1962 Legal Aid Act, and it's the Department of Justice website. Says, he says, if you don't like it, take it up with the Department of Justice. So I then wrote to the Minister for Justice and said, look what's going on. Didn't get a response, of course. And at that point then I said, right, I've had it. I've now made 5 or 6 applications for legal aid, all lawful, and I'm being ignored, refused. Not refused now, not lawfully refused, which a judge can do. It was granted to me, but they would not assign a solicitor to me. And of course, as you can imagine, it was getting increasingly difficult for me to find my own, given that we were going up against judges and the like. So this trial was set then for May the 2nd, and they sent up, we'll call him the hanging judge, up out of Cork, a man called Sean O'Donovan, who prides himself on being a hard man. And he came in on May the 2nd, and I went in. Now, in the meantime, my co-accused, Colm, had heart surgery, and that's a separate story. We won't get into that now. But still, his case is still pending. Because even though he was declared guilty in his absence also on January the 23rd, bizarrely, Judge Enos McCarthy revoked that decision a few weeks later, and we don't fully understand why or how he could do that, but he did.
Okay. Can we speak? Because we have questions that we have to get through as well. So if we get to the stage where the judge says, because we want you to talk about the process when they take you away. That's what we want to get to.
Yes, well, now, I've been sentenced to 2 months in jail, but it's pending an appeal. So the appeal started on May the 2nd in front of this Judge O'Donovan from Cork. And, again, another travesty. I said, I'm entitled to legal aid. He said, okay, you bring in a solicitor, I'll let you have him. I said, well, that's a ridiculous thing to say, Judge. If I walk out of here, you can continue the trial in my absence. He said, that's right. I mean, it's just ridiculous, So we had 2 days of this back and forth, and then I said to my wife and children, I said, look, this can only go one way. So on the Wednesday, each day I'd said to him, this is unlawful. You can't continue doing this. You're in breach of your own oath of office and EU laws and international treaties and all the rest of the whole lot. And he tried to bully. He wouldn't even speak into the microphone, for the record. He had the microphone turned away from him completely. He refused me all the records. And in the end, I said to him, look, Judge, I'm now putting you on notice that I want the information, I want your insurance bond, I'm going to sue you. You need to recuse yourself in this case and get another judge in here because you tried to bully and intimidate me all the way through. And then he said, are you refusing to continue? And I said, no, I've got 7 more witnesses to call. And he didn't know what to do with himself. It was a stalemate, and he tried bullying me, it didn't work. He got up, he walked out, he said, I've got to go and look at my law books. We believe he went off to make a phone call. And he came back, and then he had an exchange with the barrister, and he said to the barrister, what do you think, Mr. Reynolds? And he said, I think Mr. Manning's on a filibuster. And the judge said, yes, I agree, appeal denied. And I said, but you can't. But he did. You can't. And by denying my appeal, he reinforced the prison sentence, and I just handed my bags to my wife and my friends there. and went off with the guards to be processed in Castlereagh prison. And, the story of being in prison is not that, I was treated fairly by the people inside and all the rest of it, but, and some senior personnel in there, obviously, let's say, pulled a couple of strings to try and get me out earlier than I would have been, because I would have been due yesterday.
Well, tell us what happened. I mean, the judge turned around, and what did he say? And then did the guards put you in handcuffs or take you away, or what happened?
Yeah, no, the judge he'd stormed out of the courtroom on the Wednesday afternoon because my friend Colm, as I was telling you about earlier, he was my first witness. So I had Colm on the stand, and he wouldn't allow the judge to bully him, and the judge was getting more and more exasperated. And we had this exchange where I said, "Judge, could I ask you please to speak into the microphone for the record?" And he said, "Don't you tell me what to do in my court." I said, "Judge, I'm sorry," and I was speaking exactly like this. I said, "I think this is a respectful and a reasonable request, given that this matter is obviously going to go to higher courts at some point." Now, I meant the European courts, And he said, "Move it on." And I said, "But Judge," I said, "I have to respectfully ask you, please, we don't know that your voice has been picked up by the microphone. Will you please speak into the microphone?" "Move it on, speak into the microphone. Move it on, speak into the microphone." And I said, "Okay, are you refusing?" He said, "Yes." And he said it right there. He's refusing to speak into the microphone. I said, "Okay, in that case, Judge, I'm going to repeat everything you said so that we have a clear record of what's going on." Now, this was driving him nuts.
Yeah.
And he slammed his books, and he got up and he stormed up. He said, "I'm not putting up with any more of this bloody nonsense," he said, And that was the end of the Wednesday. So he came back in on Thursday morning, and he said, "Right, are you ready to continue?" And I said, "Well, we're back at square one, aren't we, Judge?" I said, can you please speak into the microphone?" And it was around that time then that he said, "Are you refusing to continue?" I said, "No, not at all. Not at all."
Okay.
You wanted me to say I'm refusing to continue.
Okay, again, I'm watching time, Stephen, and can we just get to the part where tell us the process, because I want people to know when the judge turned around. We know that the judge is corrupt. We know you've tackled him in the court and all that kind of stuff. That's great, and so he got frustrated. The time he turns around and slams, the hammer down or whatever and says, "Right, 2 months in jail. Take us from there."
Yeah, well, he didn't get to say that. It was Amos McCarthy said that back in January.
Okay.
And again, I think it was the threat. I have a feeling they never actually intended to put me in jail. I have a feeling that they just wanted to have me convicted and try and cause some embarrassment and show everyone, this is what happens when you go up against the system and whatever. But he was put in a position. I told him, what you're doing is unlawful. You know it. And with that, Judge O'Donovan appeal denied. And he seemed befuddled, to be honest with you. He didn't seem to know. He was sort of as if he was expecting a big hand to come down and slap him across the ear or something, what can I do? So the guards came up to me, and I handed my bags to my family and my friends there, and they took me out to the police station. In the police station, you get handcuffed, and I was actually handcuffed to another prisoner who'd received a violent beating at the hands of the guards, a traveller man, but I was handcuffed to him, and then we were processed. It takes about an hour or so, they take details down on paper, and then we were put in a van and driven to Castlereagh. And somewhat ironically, the escorting Garda sergeant was Sergeant Handley, the same sergeant that I tried to prosecute in the first place. And he was being friendly and everything to me, but he's almost an aside, in the sense that it was him that we went after in the first place. It wasn't anything personal. It was just that he was the sergeant in charge of a gang of out-of-control guards who are, beating up the public, So, and then you get to, it is daunting and it is a bit intimidating and it's worrying. I have to admit, I was far more worried between January and May at the prospect of being taken away from my family, because I also have a son with special needs, and my daughters are still teenage, my wife is foreign national, Japanese, so taking me out of the equation, and you have anxieties as well about what might happen, or we've seen some of the dirty tricks that can be played, and and also inside prison too, I'd have been anxious, like any red-blooded male, going into a prison environment, with a lot of big muscly tattooed guys, walking around and strutting about, you wonder what may. But as it turned out, after a few days, after I talked to a few of the prisoners and that, and the word had gotten out why I was in there, and the fact that I was the only prisoner in Castlereagh that was there without legal representation, and who had not been allowed to enter a defence in their case. And then, that the word got out, and even a couple of the senior officers spoke to me about it and said that it seemed very bizarre. But one of the tricks they played, and I'll mention this guy, there's a solicitor called Alan Gannon, who's out of Castlereagh in County Roscommon, which is where the prison is, of course. Now,
but before you go in there, because obviously we don't want to paste over the whole idea that you were in the jail. Tell us, were you in a cell on your own? Were you with somebody there? What's the procedure? Do they, when you go in, do they take your clothes and then give you jail clothes and stuff like that?
Yes, well, the first thing they take in police custody, they take the belt off you, your tie, anything like that could be technically used as a weapon or to hurt yourself is taken off you, your watch and all that. It's quite, what's the word?
Demoralizing.
It's quite disorientating, especially when you have no way of telling the time or anything like that, and you're left in a cell on your own,
Yeah.
But, at the prison, yes, the first thing that happens, you come in and you're taken to the office, and you're processed in the sense that they take your basic details. They issue a prisoner number and remind you any more visits you have here, you'll quote this number. And after that, you're taken over to a centre where you're basically, you have to strip, and all of your clothes, down to your socks and your underpants, go into a basket, and that's put in a locker. Quite unceremoniously, I might add, it's thrown into a locker for you to collect when you leave. So you can imagine if you go in there with sweaty socks or something, they could be in there for months. It's smaller because nobody's there to say, But then they give you prison issue clothing. In my case, I was given a pair of stained underwear, actually, which I said, "Don't you mind? I've got something else." But they've been washed, but they clearly hadn't been. They've been washed in cold water or something, but they had stains on them. So it's very undignified, And then you get two different colour socks and an old baggy tracksuit, and everybody can spot it when you go out into the yard. You're the newbie, But you're kept in isolation for the first day in case you do try to commit suicide or anything like that. As you can imagine, people coming in there. For the first occasion, but they weigh you, they measure you, they take your photograph, and there's none of this stuff in the old Rambo movies. You don't get a big hose turned on you, and there's nobody poking around your bodily cavities. That's all been outlawed now. But they do sit you on a electronic machine, a scanner, to make sure that you're not concealing anything inside yourself or whatever. And then you're held overnight in the holding cell. It's stark, but at least in the holding cell there's a TV and a kettle, so you can make yourself a cup of tea or anything, and you hear the noises of the prison through the night. It's unsettling, especially when you think to yourself, how long will I be in here? Because if you make a step wrong, your sentence can be increased and all the rest of it. But then you're brought in front of the governor the next morning. And the governor comes across at first, of course, as an austere man, and he sits quietly in the corner while a senior uniformed officer tells you the rules and the regulations. And it's a formality, but it's part of the regulations that it's required, it has to happen. And you're basically told, keep it low, keep your head down, don't get involved with any rough types, and show respect to the staff, and your time will go in the time it's going to take, but. I was allowed, I told him the story, I said, well, I have to put it on the record, Governor. I said, and I understand that you've been given paperwork to admit me into the prison. I said, but I've got to put it on the record that I'm in here unlawfully. And they're a little surprised looking at me, well, we've got the paperwork. And I said, I know, but I'm telling you, I said, the paperwork is not lawful. I said, first of all, the judge has claimed that he held a hearing. He did not hold the hearing. He only held half the hearing. I said, and secondly, the original committal order from Judge Amos McCarthy does not have a signature on it. Now, these might seem like minor things, but I believe the reason that Amos McCarthy's signature wasn't on the paper was because he didn't want to be held liable for it. So the paperwork I have now that they brought me into prison on doesn't have Amos McCarthy's signature on it. It has a printed by the clerk, but she states next to it, this is a genuine copy of the original. Well, it isn't.
No,
but how do you get anyone to deal with this if you don't have legal representation? You're sitting in jail. You're told you can have one phone call a day. Now,
were you on
the governor anyway? They were. I have to say the senior officer. I won't name him here, for obvious reasons. But one of the senior officers said to me after the interview with the governor, he said, "Look, you come across as a decent, principled man. And you'd be one of the older men we'd have in here," and so on. He says, what I'm going to do, he said, I'm going to arrange that you're in a cell on your own. Now, that's quite good because most prisoners are sharing.
Yeah.
They're bunked up two to a cell, and they really are only designed for one person. And they have a toilet in them, which is, it's not segregated. So if you're in there doing your business, you're there in full view of your inmate. And you can imagine all the smells and stuff that might be, permeate the thing. So there's no escaping, so to speak. But the procedure in there, you're up at 8 o'clock in the morning or thereabouts, and you go and collect your breakfast. And breakfast is simply a bag of Rice Krispies or cornflakes with milk. If you need a razor, you sign for a safety razor, and it's collected back off you about an hour later. But you take your breakfast back to your cell. You're locked in the cell. You eat your breakfast, tie up your cell if you have a bit of time, and then they come and collect the razor back from you. And then you have a choice of going out into the yard for about 2 hours, or if the weather is really bad, they have what they call the recreation room, which is it's got a pool table in there, a billiard table, but other than that, it's just a big open area, and there's an area outside for guys to smoke. And then you come back to your cell for a midday meal, which is good, I have to say. The midday meal was usually good. You might get something like chicken and roast potatoes or something. Plenty of bread if you want it, and so on. You're back out again in the yard 2 o'clock to about 4 o'clock. And what you do in the yard, basically, it's just like the movies. It's a very high fenced with razor wire around the top of it, and the only thing you can do in the yard basically is walk around in circles. Occasionally, I don't know how they would. I suppose people would bring them in for them, but the little handballs, the little sort of squash balls.
Yeah.
Some of the men there would have these, and they'd be playing handball, against the wall. But you just walk around. You try and find one or two prisoners that seem approachable, and you kill time by just walking around in circles or sitting down talking about stuff. And I was fortunate. I met a couple of guys in there that were, they were good company. So I helped pass the time. And then after your evening meal, the evening meal is at 4 o'clock, and it's pretty basic. You might get a boiled egg and a sausage and some bread or something like that, or whatever, but or a bowl of pasta or but that's the last meal of the day, and then you can come out again in the evening. There's another hour and a half or so in the yard, or you can elect to use the gym, and there's a well-staffed gym, well-stocked gym. So I started doing that because the first 10 days or so you've got nothing, because it takes them 10 days to process your clothes. Like my wife sent up some of my own personal clothes, a tracksuit, and a couple of T-shirts, so that you can wear yourself. But it literally took about 10 days for that process so for 10 days you're in the same. I mean, I was literally washing the socks in the sink. No soap or anything like that. I say no soap, no washing powder, or anything like that. You just wash the socks in one, drape them over a pipe, in the underpants and that, and so hopefully they'll be clean for them.
I will say, Stephen, it's a good way to learn how to prep, because you'd need to do that. Stephen, we have about 15 minutes left. 10 of them minutes are going to be quick fire questions. Now they'll have to be quick fire because we only have 10 minutes. So if you can answer them in a sentence or two, that'd be great. So, because I'm just watching the time. Steve.
Okay, well, the first one we go to is Shane's question. Shane actually popped a question there a couple of moments ago. Can you ask Stephen when he expects any of his cases to be heard in Europe?
The Supreme Court the officers of the Supreme Court have been making it very, very difficult for me to get my paperwork through. I'm in touch with a law firm, let's just say outside of the Irish jurisdiction, and I'm hoping to discuss these matters with them in the next couple of days. But there's one Supreme Court case which is active at the moment, but the DPP's office again are doing everything they can to thwart and obstruct and obfuscate. But like I say, I would imagine within the next 2 or 3 months now we'd have some pretty good idea of what's happening with those.
Okay, next one.
Well, I mean, okay, you're going to go through the process, but I mean, if they're going to railroad you at every hand's turn, I mean, do you reckon any of them will ever be heard?
Well, I'm already in a position where I could go directly to the European Court of Human Rights based on this trial and the imprisonment. There's so many breaches of human rights law and international treaties and conventions that it's literally astonishing. But what I should say here, Steve, I wrote to the Irish Human Rights Commission, and I have to give you this quote. The Irish Human Rights Commission wrote back a letter saying, thank you for telling us about your unlawful incarceration in Castlereagh. It took them 6 weeks to get back to me. The sentence would have been served by the time they got the letter. Whilst these rules and regulations are binding with Ireland, because we're in the EU, there is at present no mechanism to enforce them in the domestic arena. Thank you for your interest in the Commission. I'm sorry we couldn't be of further help. Now, that's the Irish Human Rights Commission. It has 15 commissioners on a board. And I feel like writing back to them saying, what on earth is your function? You know?
Exactly,
what are you doing? If you're not here, protect us when our civil rights have been violated.
I take it the Irish taxpayers paying their salary, and they're sitting on their arse doing nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
absolutely.
I'll just being blunt. Right, the next question. Sorry, Stephen, we have to shoot through them.
Right.
Okay, Tommy wants to know, can you ask Stephen if he has ever heard of Dean Clifford and Santos Bonacci? They have similar stories to Stephen, both imprisoned for standing up to the judiciary.
Actually, what I'll do, lads, after this, if you'd be good enough to send those names over to me, I'll research them. There is a guy up in the north of Ireland, a fellow called Carlin, a police officer, who relatively recently went in and tried to arrest a judge for perverting the course of justice. He lost his job, got, I think, 3 months in jail, but he's now a spokesperson, and he's doing very similar work, and I hope to be in touch with him soon.
Yeah, I heard about him.
Okay, well, those two names, we've actually forwarded them over to you, Stephen, on the Skype, so you will have those. Where we go next, Colin was wondering earlier, does Stephen think that changing the system might be better than trying to beat the system at their own game?
Well, it's a combination of both, isn't it? I mean, clearly we've got a very serious problem, a particular problem in Ireland, as opposed to, let's say, England, America. And we know there's corruption everywhere in various degrees. But in Ireland, it's become a sort of a culture. It's become the way things are done. And if by so-called attacking the system or trying to play it at their own game, what I'm doing at least is exposing the hypocrisy and the lie, the big lie, all are equal before the law. That's the first thing you read in the Constitution, all are equal before the law. Another one, judges are subject to the law and the Constitution. Are they? Really? No, they're not. So either we rewrite the Constitution and make it a truthful document, although it would be very unsavoury if we did that. Either we rewrite the Constitution or we honour and respect the Constitution. Otherwise, there's no point having a Constitution.
Exactly. I think our forefathers would be rolling in their graves, seeing the cesspit that Ireland has become and the corruption and the blatant lies that is taking place, the me, myself and I culture in the 1%. It's just disgraceful. It really is disgraceful. Steve, you got another one there for Steve?
Yeah, I just want to say as well, I mean, Stephen, we actually do need more people like you because, as we said before, no one in this country, well, with obviously the exception of the judges who break the laws and the barristers and all those who don't, who going to make up their own, the rules of the game need to be explained. Everyone needs to know the rules of the game, and if more people were like you, took the time to learn the rules, then if anyone found themselves up against these people or in the chess game as we refer to it, then at least they would have a fighting chance. But I think a lot of people who do end up before these judges, they haven't a clue what's going on because of the legalese language as well. And I know groups like the Hub are trying to educate people, and Integrity Ireland are trying to educate people as to what to do if and when you find yourself in this situation. And I think more people need to be doing that. I mean, I'd go as far as to say this stuff needs to be taught in school. Yeah, I'd agree. And Steve, I'll just say very briefly, and I will keep it brief. This is coming back to this common informer process. Now, I know people watching on will go, yeah, but hold on, Stephen, you've had how many bats at this so far, and you still haven't technically gone across the line. But the point I need to come back and say, yes, but every step of the way, the only way that they are stopping these common informer applications is by committing even more crimes. And we're now at a point, acting in criminal ways, so would be a better way to put it. So we're now at a point where, instead of me going after a Garda sergeant for assaulting the public, I'm at the point now where I'm going to be lodging a common informer private criminal prosecution against a circuit court judge and possibly also a high court judge. Now,
the facts will be there. But you see what we're doing, even if we don't eventually see them getting locked up or chastened or chastised or anything, the pressure is building on them. And there's no doubt in my mind that what we're doing is having a serious effect on we look at Mr. Ross and all these judicial appointments and all this stuff going on in the background. There is great pressure building, and if we can just get that one message out to everybody listening today, and tell all your families and all your friends, did you know, if you know for a fact that a solicitor, a barrister, a guard, or a judge has done you wrong, if you can find that line of text in an act or a statute that shows that this was breaking the law, and we're usually talking about things like perjury, contempt of court, interfering with the administration of justice, perverting the course of justice, fraud, and criminal damage, deleting evidence and things like that. There's only a handful of them that's going on, but they permeate the whole system. And if you can identify that that's what this solicitor has done, and I mentioned briefly there a minute ago a man called Alan Gannon out in Castlereagh. He left a note up with the prison saying that he would represent me. He never even bothered to call me. But as a result of him making that statement, my wife was turned away from the prison 3 times, which when she had papers that would have hastened my exit out of jail had I gotten the papers. And I went to see the man last week to see what was going on, thinking there might be some explanation. And he was arrogant and rude. I've actually got it recorded, and I'll play it up on the internet at some point in the near future. Arrogant and rude, said, "I'm not having this conversation." I said, "But how could you leave this notice up at the gate?" And again, you've got to suspect, well, that was one convenient way of making sure that nobody else, and I had friends out there trying to put in applications to the High Court to get me out, but they were all either obstructed or thwarted or delayed or backdated by 2 weeks, So all I've got to do now is identify, right, I can clearly see that this document has been backdated, that's an act of fraud, who's responsible? And the minute I find out who it is, and I don't care, literally, if it happens to be a High Court judge, then it's the High Court judge's name that's going to go down on that application for a summons and to drive them into the Circuit Court, or the District Court, to face a prosecution. And if the judge in the District Court refuses to sign it, he's breaking the law. And if we just could get enough people to grasp, it's that simple, just go in and start the process. And like I said, even if we can't do anything else but just create a slew of these applications, at least these crooked elements in the establishment would start thinking twice about doing what they're doing, If they thought, well, you know what, this guy's a member of Integrity Ireland, or this guy's a member of the HUG, or a member of ACT, or one of these other groups that are being effective in drawing attention to what's going on. And if I defraud this person, or if I treat them like a dog and threaten to throw them in jail, which is against my own code of conduct and oath of office, then they're going to actually come after me. Oh, my God. And they don't need the guards or the DPP's office or lawyers and barristers to do it. They can do it all on their little lonesome, in plain language, and at no cost.
Plus the fact that, Stephen, sorry, Steve, I was going to say, plus the fact that you're on radio shows and you're telling everybody about what's going on, and people will realise, not just in Ireland, but internationally, how the cesspit of corruption is happening in Ireland and who these people really are and what's going on.
Yes, and this, look, we haven't got the death penalty anymore. The worst thing they can do to you is take away your liberty. But if they do it in circumstances like they've done with me, it's going to come back tenfold. Because even the very fact, like I said, I was pleasantly surprised, I have to say, and I have to give credit to the guys, I'll just say Tom and Colin and Joe and Andrew and Marguerite and other people who were up there trying to launch papers, who went to the effort of coming to the jail to see me, who supported this. There's people came over to my family, brought groceries, some people brought some money, the things that, I was very touched at the response in between the outrage and the exasperation and the anger that people had felt at what had happened. There was this immediate concern. Let's go and make sure that Stephen's family's all right. And I don't mind saying this on the airwaves. When I came out and I checked my bank balance in the bank, I had €12. Wow. So it wasn't a moment too soon. Those generous people who, and I like I said, I won't embarrass people by naming too many names, but the people who pulled together to make sure that my family was all right when I was in there and that they weren't worried. Yeah,
well, that's fair play. Well, listen, Stephen, we're going to have to leave it there because we have another guest to come on. But what we're going to do is we're going to have to do a part 2 because there's so much stuff to go down. So many little rabbit holes to go down. But basically, we just wanted to get your story, get it out there, and highlight the corruption that's going on between the judicial system over here in Ireland, because it is a cesspit of corruption. It seriously is. And fair play to what you're doing and the team in Integrity Ireland. And, keep up the good work. That's all I'll say. And if there's any news, let us know. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to get all your links off you there. Steve.
Yeah, best wishes from all involved here, Steve. We obviously, as Alan said, you definitely took one for the team. Nobody wants to be taken away from the family and go through what you had to go through, but you did it, and I believe it will probably make you a stronger person. You certainly seem very determined. But then again, the last time we had you on, you always seemed like a man who has his head well screwed on and is focused. But we do have your website here, integrityireland.ie. So we're going to put that up in the chat room, and people can go check that out. There's a lot of information on it. Is there any other links you want to throw out there for the audience?
Yes, there's one in particular, Steve, and that is if they go on the Integrity Ireland website, and if they go to the resources link on the top right-hand side and scan down, there is, let's say I've got resources and links, and if they go down to books and presentations, right, I've just put up there recently the European Handbook on Access to Justice. Now, it's a free downloaded document, a PDF document. Anybody can read it. It's not a difficult read. People should get in and read this, because this is the handbook that tells you, chapter and verse of what your rights are. And if I could say this, Steve, just to close, I put a post up on Facebook shortly before I went into jail, thinking that it was an increasing likelihood, because I knew I was going to have to face down these bullying judges. And I said this. I said, we are winning this one, folks, even if we have to go to jail to prove it.
Yeah, true. Well, the good news is it is happening, and people are waking up to what's going on. Right, Stephen, we're going to let you go. We have another guest to get on there. Thanks a lot for coming on. Much appreciated. Just stay with us there for a minute. We're just going to pop off to a musical break, and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Okay, a little bit of Bonnie Tyler there, holding out for a hero. And Stephen Manning is a hero to a lot of people. Just remember, you too can be a hero to yourself, your family, your community, your country. Just go to the link there, integrityireland.ie, and just check out the information that Stephen has up there, and educate yourselves and pass it on.
And let people know about the show and what Stephen has experienced, and get them to tune into the interview and listen to what Stephen says. If you look at our judicial system, it's a cesspit of corruption. It really is. If you listen to what Stephen experiences, what you went through, and being jailed as well, it's unbelievable, that the system. But people are waking up, and that's the great thing. People are beginning to realise it and challenge the system. Now, our next guest is a lady called Antoinette. Now, as you all know, the Basis project is on in September, and there's a number of speakers on the Basis project. It's over 3 days. We're going to be on it as well. I believe we're on it on the Saturday after Kerry Cassidy. But the guest we have on now, Antoinette, is going to be on the Basis project, and we're going to talk to Antoinette and just find out what her background is and basically what she's going to talk about on the show. Good evening, Antoinette. How are you doing?
Hi, how are you doing?
Right, Antoinette, before we get into what you're going to be talking about on the Basis project, what's your background?
Well, my background in regard to Egypt would be, my father lived in Egypt, spent time in Egypt before I was born, and that was really my first connection to Egypt. But at 14 years of age, I had a motorbike accident, which, I'm not going to get into now, but that was those two main things that brought me to Egypt,
Okay, so did you live over there, or did you just travel over there on holiday-wise?
No, well, I first went to Egypt in the year 2000, but I travelled back and forward until the year 2006, and then I went over there and established the mystery school, the Flower Light Mystery School I have there in Luxor now.
Right, okay, and tell us a bit about this school. If somebody was interested in going over, what would they learn, what would they do?
Well, what I do really is I take people on a journey from south to north, because Egypt, like Ireland, and the sites like Newgrange, Noth and Doth, and the three pyramids at Giza are all laid out in the same schematic, if you like, and they mirror the Milky Way and the stars that align along either side. So they also mirror the chakras in the human body. So what I do is I bring people from south to north to temples, that, there's 7 areas along from south to north that mirror the chakras in the human body, and we go from each temple, raising the energy and moving up into the higher chakras as we go, until we end the journey in the Great Pyramid, which is symbolic of the third eye and the crown chakra. And there we do the final initiations and activations, which are mind-blowing journeys.
Okay, when you say activations, what are you activating?
We're activating ancient memory, we're activating codes, we're activating our superconducting DNA.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, we've heard a lot of things about this. We've done a few shows with people coming on talking about it. And what about past memories? Is that something that you activate as well?
Absolutely, because if you want to say the operating language of the universe is number and shape, which is geometry. And that's the language that our subconscious and our mind, when it is working properly, our brain working in equal potential, the male and female, that's the language it understands, not the language that we speak today. And that whole story is encoded in the Tower of Babel story, which is, connected with Egypt through Skota and God El Glass.
So does
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to mention about the language before the Tower of Babel, which is, the connection between the mystery schools of Egypt and Ireland, because the language before the Tower of Babel was known as Hebrew, which was the language of light. But it's not a language that we would think of now. It's literally the language of, as I mentioned, number and geometry.
And what about past lives? Do you get any information from past lives?
Absolutely, because the work that we do along the way is activating each thing that we do, each center that we go to, each temple we go into. We do, chanting and where we can, because you can't do that in every temple. But all those things activate the memory. But also, what we do is work with the geometry, and that in itself is a code, which then activates the information, which brings back the ancient memory.
Right. Okay. Is there any work on the pineal gland in this?
Absolutely. The Great Pyramid represents the pineal gland and the pituitary gland together. The King's Chamber and the Queen's Chamber, the so-called, they're named King's Chamber and Queen's Chamber by the Egyptologists. But they actually represent, the King's Chamber actually represents the pineal gland, and the Queen's Chamber represents the pituitary gland. And the whole pyramid in its entirety represents the brain. But, it represents many things, not just one. But one of the things it represents is the actual brain.
Okay, and if people are interested in going, they have to go up to Egypt with you, the mystery school?
Well, that's one of the things I'm actually working on at the moment, is running journeys now in Ireland as well. I haven't run one yet, but I am looking at doing one for in the summer of 2018. But up to now, yes, to answer that question, people would come to Egypt, because I've been working out of Egypt since 2006.
Now, is there any criteria that people, do they have to be awake? Do they have to be spiritual? Or is there any criteria that things they need to have or be before they go?
Well, to be honest, you need to be perfectly well rooted and well balanced in order to integrate the energies that you will experience, because many people come on journeys and they take them 2 weeks in the Canaries. It's not that. It's a powerful journey, and I know a lot of people, they read things like they're going on journeys, workshops, things like this, and they don't always take them so seriously. But Egypt is a different thing, and the work we do there is so powerful that you have to be very balanced, very rooted, and very orientated as to where you're actually going with your goal,
Well, that's when you have 10 or 12% of the population, I think.
It's not many people, to be honest with you. And I have witnessed, at times people not being able for the information that's, that they're receiving at the time, and it can cause problems for people, So, one of the things would be that you would have to be very balanced,
Okay. That's interesting, because if they're going through past lives and there's trauma in past lives, is there a way, I can understand why you have to be rooted and not flighty. You get some people who are very flighty,
exactly.
And they have to be grounded. But if they are going through past lives or past regression and they come across something that was traumatic in a past life, how do you deal with that with somebody?
Well, that's the reason for the rooted and the grounding, and kind of in the first place, is that they're able to cope with those kind of emotions, because they are the things that will undoubtedly come up with everybody, and they're the things that knocks people off their balance. So that's, and then, it does happen, But if you're rooted, you're going to be less knocked off your balance. So, and also I'm there, you know, to guide, if you like, the person through the experience, you know.
Okay, because it's interesting. There is a small percentage of the people who would be rooted and be able to do this. I think with the way things are at the moment, we've heard an awful lot about energy changes on the planet and the energy rising, and it's affecting a lot of people who are not resonating on the higher frequency. Have you come across this?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what happens on the journeys. People come thinking that they're ready for a journey, and a lot of the time they're not. And as you said, and you're quite right in saying that it's only a small percentage of people. So the journeys are not for everybody, and I don't say they are. They're for people who are really ready to take that step forward. These are ascension journeys. Okay, and is there any way that you can assess somebody before they go? Like, surely you want to make sure that if people are going, that they're not going to waste their money because you want to get them, for them to get the maximum out of the training and going over, and it'd be a waste for them to do that. So do you have any kind of self-assessment or assessment on the person before you accept them in to do the training? That's a really great question, because that's something that I've been looking at quite recently, you know. Up to now, to be honest with you, I haven't had a way to do that. I do talk to people, you know, obviously over Skype if I can, or because up to now I've been in Egypt organising the journeys. So it's difficult for me to meet with people before they arrive, but as much as I can, I speak to them by email or by Skype. But that does not always tell you what's going to happen when people arrive. Yeah. In fact, it never does, to tell you the truth. Yeah, you can't be kind of meeting somebody in person and just picking up on their energy. Well, it's very difficult. You know, up to now it has been very difficult, let's say, because I was working from Egypt. I'm not sure it's going to be any easier, you know, working from Ireland to meet people, because the people that come on the journeys to Egypt come from everywhere, you know. True, yeah. So the only way you could do it is really through Skype. Tell us what you're going to be talking about in the Bases project in September. Well, you know, so really the basic thing that I'm going to be talking about is the connection between the mystery schools of Egypt and Ireland, because, you know, I know a lot of this information has been brought out kind of most recently, but there's so many connections between, you know, the mystery schools of Egypt and Ireland. And it's not that there's even connections, it's that we Irish are actually the descendants of the Egyptians that came into Ireland. But then again, the Egyptians that come into Ireland are descendants of the Irish that went into Egypt even, you know, thousands of years previous to that. And again, as I mentioned in the beginning, the knowledge and wisdom that they brought with them everywhere, all over the world, not just into Egypt, was that of something completely different to what we even understand now. So I'm going to be talking about those connections. Basically, the story of the people are told, the Irish arriving into Egypt, they're told in a temple in Egypt. They're called the Masters of the Net. They're called by many names. Another name of them, they were called the Shemshu Hor. So we have the connection of those people been told and their story been told in Egypt. I'm also going to talk about Scota and why the daughter of Akhenaten is buried in Kerry. I'm going to be talking about Akhenaten, of course, and his connection with the whole thing, and why his information has been turned even in more, I would say, New Age circles. There's still a lot of people who consider Akhenaten and talk about Akhenaten as a heretic and a sun worshipper and somebody who instigated monotheistic religions of today, which is in its entirety completely false, because he wasn't talking about the sun at all. He was talking about the light behind the sun, which is entirely more advanced knowledge than religion and what's been accredited to him now. Okay. So as sorry, go ahead. No, it obviously sounds like it's going to be interesting. The subject. I know a few people that are kind of big into that, and as you say, a lot of people have studied it. And the Irish, I was going to say that about when you said the Egyptians gone to Ireland, and then you said, well, the Irish actually went to Egypt first. And I was going to say, that's funny, I read about that as well. And that's why fundamentally the Irish are so attacked in so many ways, because of some profound energy power. I'm not too sure what it is. Why we're being beaten down all the time. Yeah, and if you look at our language as well, because, you know, in our ancient manuscripts, it tells a story. That's why I mentioned the Tower of Babel and the one language that it says we spoke, or rather that we understood. That it says that the whole world understood one language until the building of the Tower of Babel. And when, you know, all the people of the earth came together to build the Tower of Babel, this is what it says in the Bible. the gods said, they held council and decided that we better go down and destroy the tower, because if we allow these people to communicate with this one language, they'll become like us and even better than us. So they confused all the languages. But then you look at the story in the ancient Irish manuscripts, and it says that the 72, Phineas Farsad and 72 chieftains on the plain of Shinar attended the building of the Tower of Babel. And they studied all the confused languages. And what they did was they took each of the 72 of the confused languages and they combined it all together to make Imberla, which is the Gaelic language, so that the Gaelic language contains the universal language and all of the 72 confused languages. So that makes it an interesting point as to why the Irish people were prevented from speaking their language.
Oh, okay. Now that's interesting. Yeah. Okay, we have a couple of questions in for you, Antoinette. Steve?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go to the last question first, and this is from one of the listeners on People's Internet Radio. Has Antoinette heard of, I'm going to get this wrong, I know, Commons, C-O-M-Y-N-S, Commons Beaumont, the Irish Origins of Civilization?
Yeah, the Irish Origins of Civilization is Michael Tessarian, and Michael Tessarian quotes quite a lot from Commons Beaumont, who is another writer, but yes, I have heard of him, yeah.
Okay.
Right, okay, and bio-quantum geometric healing. I'm wondering, is it a secret? Because I've looked on the website and there's nothing there.
There's a good reason for that. I'm just building that new website now, I've just changed from an old website to a new website, so I haven't got everything up there, sorry about that.
Oh, that's fine.
But,
very nice website it is too.
Bio-quantum geometric healing is based on what I'm talking about, the universal language, the language of number, shape and form. And I mentioned that these people were known as the masters of the net. Well, the net that they were constructing, or that they constructed, was the space matrix, the space-time matrix. And they made an ethereal space-time matrix, but they also created one that was a physical one, which is the temples, the pyramids, and all the ancient sites all over the world, because they're built on the nodal points of this grid, which connect to the ethereal grid.
When you say the gods of Babel, or the gods didn't want everybody speaking the one language, who are the gods?
Well, that's the point. I'm not actually saying that. That's what it says in the Bible. I'm just saying what the passage from the Bible that talks about the Tower of Babel. It says that when the people came together and built this tower, the gods were watching, and the gods said, we better go down and destroy their tower. But that's a good question. Who were the gods?
And then the question after that is, how did they change the languages so sudden, if they did?
Well, that's it, yeah. They confused the languages. But not only did they confuse the languages, but they scattered them to the four corners of the earth. Yeah. So they could never come together in cooperation again. But the interesting point is that the tower story contains not only information about language being confused, but it also discusses building, construction. So this has to do with also the ancient sites around the world.
Okay, yeah, that's it really gets in depth, doesn't it? When you start.
It is very in depth, yeah.
How many questions do you have there, Steve?
One.
Okay, just watching. We'll have the question, and we're just watching the time there. But go ahead.
No. Yeah, Chris is just wondering, Antoinette, if you get a chance, please ask Antoinette about Andrew Power's book, Ireland, Land of the Pharaohs.
Yeah, that's an amazing book, and Andrew Power was, the book was an amazing book, and obviously I think we all know that he only wrote one book, but he touched so much on everything that actually I touched on before I even came across his book. So he talks about, the Battle of the Boyne, he talks about Newgrange and the information encoded inside Newgrange, which is, exactly where I was coming from. So I was amazed to come across Andrew Power's book when I did, and we both so closely resonated in what we were talking about.
Right, and you've one more question there, just jumped in.
Yeah, I know, and I don't think that's the right spelling of the name, but I'll ask it anyway. Tommy says, please ask Antoinette if she has ever heard of or studied under Drumvalo, wasn't it?
Drumvalo Melchizedek.
Yeah. Drumvalo Melchizedek.
Yeah.
I've never personally met Drumvalo Melchizedek, no. He is most famous for the flower life. That's, the geometry that I'm talking about. That's the geometry I work with, which is the flower life. I have never personally met Drumvalo. I've never personally studied under Drumvalo. And I personally don't resonate with everything Drumvalo says either.
Yeah, I've seen a few of his videos, all right, you know. But, okay, Antoinette, well, listen, we've reached that time. Much appreciated for coming on. It's just a quick interview to introduce people to yourself and to say that you're going to be at the Basis Project in September with a whole load of other people over the 3-day period. Before we let you go, if people want to check you out, well, I'm going to pass you out to Steve. Steve does all the communication side. Steve?
Well, I'm just going to say, you can check out Antoinette's website, floweroflight.com. It's a very colourful and very interesting website. And Antoinette is also on Facebook as well. So if you go to facebook.com, Flower of Light Mystery School. Anything else you want to throw out there? Any other links, Antoinette?
No, just about the journey I mentioned. I'm going to run a journey in December in Egypt, and I have a workshop on in Ireland in September.
Excellent stuff.
We look forward to meeting you there.
Okay, well,
right.
as I say,
look forward to meeting you at the conference. Yeah, that's perfect. It'd be really nice to meet you.
Yeah, no, it'd be good to hook up, and then maybe what we'll do is before December we'll do a show, a longer interview, and
that'd be great.
And then we can expand on that. On what you do, so people can we can get more into questions and information and the whole kind of mystery school. But no problem at all. No, thanks a lot for coming on. Just stay with us there for a minute. We're just going to quickly pop off to a musical break. We'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Okay, we're back again. Antoinette's website, floweroflight.com, a very colourful website it is. Do check it out. As she mentioned, she will be at the Basis Project. That's going to be in September, so look out for that as well. Just very quickly, something that I didn't get to mention earlier, and I'm going to just mention it now, just in relation to Stephen Manning's information. Joan said earlier, I know of this information from Integrity Ireland's website and also from Joe Ducey. Where is the mainstream media on such matters? Seems like criminal behaviour by those in power. Thanks to OYM for airing. We also know that PIR also did an interview last week with Stephen. And Joan, you are correct. Mainstream, and this should be on all the mainstream channels as well, and it should be in all the newspapers. But unfortunately, it's a closed system and it is corrupt. So maybe when we do have all this information in relation to what, Stephen and what he's going through, and people like Stephen, we need to be bombarding mainstream media with it. I think that's what we need to do.
And you need to let people that know, give them a link to the show, email them. And just say, do you want to know how corrupt our system is? Listen to this chap. He was jailed for 2 months, or near enough 2 months, and it was illegal. That's what they should be doing, listening to what Stephen is saying, because he's on the ground. He's at the coal face, doing all the work and dealing with these corrupt judges and barristers and Gardaí and everything else. It's just unbelievable. It's disgraceful. It is disgraceful. They should be ashamed of themselves. But then again, they are psychopaths and sociopaths, and you don't have any empathy. This has got to do with the I suppose we want to call them the non-viables, or the robots, you know, or the what's the other, synthetics, as Thomas would call them. And there's only about 10 or 12%. You know, so there you go, that are like genuine people, and as we just said to Antoinette, that's the same thing. Now, Antoinette is going to be at the Basis Project. Steve's going to give us a quick rundown on that.
Yes, we have mentioned it before, and we mentioned it again. The Ireland Awakens Conference, in conjunction with Miles Johnson's Basis Project, is going to be taking place in the Talbot Hotel, Stillorgan in Dublin on the weekend of Friday, Saturday and Sunday. That's the 15th, 16th and 17th of September. The 3-day event will comprise of 16 national and international speakers covering a wide range of subjects, from UFOs, alien abductions, controlled remote viewing, sacred sites, the elite, mind control, ritual child abuse, and many more. One of the main reasons for the conference is to get an up-to-the-minute new information from an Irish perspective out into the public domain. And we're also very excited, as well as Miles Johnson speaking here in Ireland for the first time in many years, Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot will be giving a presentation on both Saturday and Sunday. Myself and Alan will be there as well, on the stage.
Just something that Chris posted up there on the chat there. Chris, can you ask Antoinette, is the Irish female energy unique? It seems that way to me. I'm sure it is. You know, we're Irish women, you know what they're like, feisty, and you don't take any crap. That's the way it is with a lot of the Irish women. Now, our guest on next week is a guy called Stan Deo. I have to do that. It's
Yeah, get out of your system now. Don't do it next week.
I won't do it next week because he's on next
You'll
week.
introduce him and you'll do that, and then he'll hang up. He'll say, "Click."
Yeah, he'll say, "What is it? The Irish people, they." Stan Deo, he's ex-military and he's been on the show before, and he has fantastic information. And basically, what we're going to do is just catch up with Stan and say, "Stan, the world's going mad. Why is it going mad? Can you tell us why it's going mad?" And hopefully, he'll have some information for us as to why it's going mad.
And hopefully, he can help us fix it as well.
Well, he'll probably have a few suggestions. Fingers crossed he will do. And so, yeah, we're just working hard. Now, again, Dougie's not on the chat tonight. And again, I just want to say, during the week, if you haven't seen Facebook or you haven't seen the email from OYM, then obviously you're not attached to the internet. Dougie, who's a long-time listener and supporter of OYM, gifted us a professional camera for us to use so we can start doing interviews. And the camera came in during the week and all the equipment came in, and I showed Steve it before we went live. It's a phenomenal camera, isn't it, Steve?
I have to say it is very professional looking, put a lot of the mainstream media to shame.
It's a 4K live streaming camera, so it wasn't cheap. And the accessories, and it means that we do have a guest lined up, a celebrity lined up who wants to do an interview, and we're now in the process. Once we learn how to use the camera, which we're getting there, we now are going to hook up with the celebrity guest, book a time, a date, and we have to actually set up the interview situation with mixing desks and all that. We want to make sure we get it right because we don't want to go to a location, go to do it and go, oh, who forgot the lead? And then we're knackered. So we want to make sure that we have everything right and everything works. And once we know that everything's okay, then we'll arrange the time, do the interview. And then when the celebrity is ready for that to go live, we will press the button, and then that will be the start of us doing video interviews with people. Now, basically what we're going to do is we're going to have to go through our guest list in Ireland, obviously, and find out who's available and who'd be up for doing a video interview. Maybe Stephen. Maybe Stephen might come and we'll do an interview with Stephen, a video interview, and get him talking and get it up there on the website. So if you have any suggestions of, we can't think of everybody, but if you have any guests that might think be good who do a video interview, then that would be a great thing. And then we'll play it by ear. We probably will be looking for a location that we can set up like a studio. Because we can't be hiring hotel rooms because we just don't have the money for that. The money's tight and budget's tight and our donations are, quite low at the moment. So we'd have to look for locations where we can get in for free or get a lend of a room or something like that. But yeah, we'll put it out to the universe as we always do. Sometimes we just let it go out and let it percolate in the universe, and hopefully, it'll boil up and then come back to us
and fester.
So there you go. So again, just to touch base on a few things that we said earlier on in the show. Check out the credit union if you're on the banks and you want to have a change. Go and check out the credit unions. Their interest rate is a lot lower. Swirl cards, although Steve did find out that they're linked to a bank, they're still good because they're a debit card, and you can only spend what you have on it. It's not a credit card; it's a debit card. And you don't have to have an account as such. You can sign up online, but that's all, just to top up the card.
I did start reading the terms and conditions, and I fell asleep at one stage. That was the noise that someone probably heard a thud in the background. That was me falling asleep, reading the T's and C's. So I don't know. I mean, is it simply a card, you load the card and you spend it?
That's it.
Or
that's it.
Are there hidden charges?
Does it cost for when you put money on the card, there'll be a little fee?
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay. That's it.
Why couldn't I just said that?
Well, you know the way it is with financial situations. Institutions, I should say, not situations. Do you know how it is? But, so that's the news anyway. So, for myself, Alan James, enjoy the weather. Apparently the weather's going to be good. So, and by the way, the raised bed is now up and running. I built it again.
Yeah, you're sleeping in it tonight.
That's it. If you haven't seen it on Facebook or the email, the raised bed is done. I actually put all the compost and soil in today. The seeds are planted. We have carrots, spring onion and cabbage. I'm just experimenting, guys. I don't have green fingers. I burn salads. So I'm just going to see if it grows, if it works, and see what happens. But I thought it turned out okay, the raised bed, for the sake that it only cost me 25 quid.
I have to say, Alan showed me this evening, and it does look very professional, I have to say, and it's definitely a credit to you.
Yeah.
And I do hope, I'm sure it will flourish.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Okay, for myself, Alan James, take it easy. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Okay, and from myself, Stephen George, it's been, as don't know who said it on the chat there, the quickest 2 hours ever. Yeah, it has been. So look, we're going to leave the stream now, and Vin is going to be up next on People's Internet Radio. So until next week, I'll say have a great week. Enjoy the sunshine if you are in Ireland. It's supposed to last until Thursday. Let's hope it lasts a little bit longer than that. Okay, until next week, take care. Bye bye.